Good afternoon, everyone. We are ready to get started with the 14th meeting of the Infrastructure and Corporate Services Committee. We'll start with the land acknowledgement. The City of London is situated on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenape, and Attawandaron. We honor and respect the history, languages, and culture of the diverse Indigenous people who call this territory home. The City of London is currently home to many First Nation, Métis, and Inuit today. As representatives of the people of the City of London, we are grateful to have the opportunity to work and live in this territory. The City of London is committed to making every effort to provide alternate formats and communication support for meetings upon request. To make a request specific to this meeting, please contact icsc@london.ca or 519-661-2489, extension 2425. I'm joined in council chambers with all members of the committee, including Mayor Morgan, and we have lots of guests as well, joined by Councillor McAllister and Councillor Ferreira, and I do not see any guests online as of yet. So welcome, everyone. Good to see you, and we will get started with item 1, which is disclosure of pecuniary interests. Okay, seeing none, I'll move on to the consent items. I've been asked to pull 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3. I've not been asked to pull 2.4. With that in mind, I'll look for someone to craft a motion to include 2.4, please. Councillor Frank. Councillor Hopkins, thank you, and that will be open in the system. One moment. Okay, that's open the system for you to vote. Sorry. Any discussion? I guess I'm moving too fast. Any discussion on this item? Okay, seeing none, thank you to those that brought this report forward. This was the supply and implementation of property tax software system award, and we will open that to vote.
Closing the vote, motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. Being that we have no other items in the other categories, we'll move back to item 2.1, which is the design contract price increase for the Wellington Gateway Transit and Municipal Infrastructure Improvement RFP 2029. Looking for a mover and a seconder on this item. Councillor Hopkins, Councillor Pribble, and any discussion. Councillor Frank, and then Councillor Van Meerbergen. Go ahead, Councillor Frank.
Thank you. Yes, and I was pleased to see some of the items in this report as I've had discussions with residents along Wellington Street in regards to overland flows. And I was just wondering, I know I'd sent in a question, I'm just wondering if Thomas Jane and Moore Streets and the streets along that area that don't have stormwater catch basins and connections to a stormwater pipe, if those will be receiving connections into the stormwater pipes.
Ms. Ramalou, go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair. So yeah, this sewer that we're doing on Wellington Road is meant to take the overland flow from those areas. The work with the RT would be kept to Wellington Road itself and possibly stubbed out onto those side streets. Any more work on the side streets would be subsequent projects, but we can certainly get back to you on timing for anything that we feel is needed there in addition to this. But this does provide the outlet. This is the biggest piece to making that better.
Councillor Frank.
Thank you. Yes. So, and then that is kind of what I was anticipating. You wouldn't rip up all of Thomas Jane and Moore to replace all of the storm sewers for those. So then will the catch basins that kind of line up at Wellington and Moore and Thomas Jane, will they be so big that the overland flow coming down those two streets will fill up into that and not stay on the property side?
Ms. Ramalou.
Thank you. Through the chair. So yes, the intent is to take that overland flow. So we are still in design work. So I don't know exactly how it's going to be laid out and function, but the idea is to alleviate that overland flooding.
Councillor Frank.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I have had many residents with flooded basements in that area, so I think this will be very welcome.
Thank you. I had Councillor Van Meerbergen next.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to 2.1, I believe the ask for the bump up is around $800,000. That's a lot of tax money for an increase just for design. And then, of course, the construction costs will be on top of that. I'm wondering, was there any inkling when we first started this BRT that this type of expense, and when we first let the contract with the designers or the design company, that this type of infrastructure would be necessary? And if we didn't have that idea, why did we not have that idea? If I could ask staff.
Thank you. I will go to Ms. Dan.
Thank you, and through the chair. As part of our environmental assessment for this project, we worked with all of our different servicing partners to do our best to be able to assess based on available condition information what coordinated infrastructure should be done and included as part of this project. Through design refinements, we determined areas where there's additional pipe that needed to be repaired, or in the case of the large component of this design change, which is the water infrastructure in the Commissioners and Wellington intersection, the further we got through the design process, we realized that coming back in and doing this work later would be very difficult once the rapid transit infrastructure was installed. We also realized that the life cycle remaining in that infrastructure made it so that we would be into this intersection again within the 20 to 30-year range, which we felt was too short. We're also able to address some operation and maintenance issues to be able to make it easier to safely maintain the infrastructure within this intersection. So there were a lot of benefits to incorporating that work now, and this is the time to be able to get it done all at once.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll just go to Ms. Ramloo, and then I'll come right back to you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, I just also wanted to highlight, the bulk of the work is related to a water chamber. So this is a large water chamber. It does look like a lot of money for design work, I acknowledge that. But when compared to other projects that we've done recently of similar type scope, so recently, for instance, we did the Chamber 13 work up in Old North. So when we looked at the dollar value for the design work and the amount of effort for that type of construction, it is on par with other projects we've done.
Councillor?
Thank you again, Chair, and thank you to staff for those responses. It wasn't that long ago we bumped up the funding for BRT. I believe it was in the neighborhood of $174 million. Please correct me if I'm wrong. That is a huge amount for an increase. Now, is this 800,000 and the resulting shovels in the ground construction increase costs, will that come out of that $174 million?
Thank you. I'll go to Ms. Dan.
Yes, and through the chair, the multi-year budget request did right-size the budget for the entire rapid transit program to meet the costs of delivering that in today's economy. All of the work that we're doing now in terms of our forecasts remain within that budget. So that covers our construction costs, design costs, land costs, everything to complete the project. And we do remain within that increased multi-year budget increase ask.
Councillor Van Meerbergen.
Thank you for that. My concern, and I would dare say the concern of taxpayers, is we haven't heard the last of increases on this BRT project. There's still a ways to go with it. And I guess the question, without being unfair, the question is, how confident are we that it's going to stay within this already inflated budget without having to come back to council and ask for even more money?
Thank you. I'll go to Ms. Dan. Go ahead.
Thank you, and through the chair, we are quite confident in the numbers that we presented with the multi-year budget. At this point, we actually have more of rapid transit construction behind us than ahead of us. This phase that we're doing the design on for Wellington Gateway, Phase 2, is the last design section for the entire corridor. The intent is to tender these last two construction phases under this design scope for this fall to start construction next year, 2026. So we have rounded the bend and we're coming near the end of the construction of rapid transit.
deficit, which again increases our confidence in the numbers we provided. The same goes for the East London Link project, which same thing, we have one last phase to tender this fall for construction next year. So based on where we sit, we're confident with the numbers that we're moving forward with for both design and construction.
Councillor Van Meerbergen.
Thank you very much for the answers, but I will not be voting in favor of this, this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Mayor Morgan next to my speakers list, followed by Councillor Frank.
Oh,
Thank you. So I'll be supporting this addition. I think the additional work that's being done, as Councillor Frank outlined, will assist those neighborhoods in mitigating some potential adverse effects to overland water flows. I think it's appropriate to do so at the time that we're working on this project. I'll say in the project as a whole, and with respect to some of Councillor Van Meerbergen's points, yes, the overall project is costly, right? And part of the challenge we have with this is we had an opportunity to take advantage of funding from other levels of government to do some necessary work on our transit system, but also recognize that there is underground water and wastewater work happening as part of this project. Yes, there is a bus rapid transit system on top of it, but getting the federal and provincial governments to pay a significant share of some of that underground infrastructure was a decision that was good on the part of the city to take advantage of. I think the challenge we have is based on when we lock into these agreements with the federal and provincial governments to when we actually are able to construct them, is the clauses in the agreements as they always have been with federal and provincial governments, saw the municipality absorb the additional costs of increased construction over that time. And we were on the hook for that at a time where we know every cost of construction went up. Even the cost of our other needed infrastructure projects like the Adelaide Street Underpass and other roadworks all had additional price appreciations because of the cost appreciations that happen generally across the world through the pandemic and coming out of it. Where I think we can be a little more strategic in the future is, should we, and under the Master Mobility Plan, expand rapid transit routes that we engage in? And I'll say other mayors have raised this as well, because we're not the only ones who faced increased cost pressures. And I'll say not just rapid transit, but others who partner with the federal and provincial governments on wastewater treatment plants and sewer plants. They all are in the same situation where their municipalities have absorbed these costs. In the future, we need to sign agreements with the provincial and federal governments that recognizes that as costs change over time, that there is a proportionate share from those levels of government so that the municipality isn't, may have been a 1/3 partner at one point, but then becomes a 50% partner over time because they're responsible for all of the increased costs between the time of the project being approved financially and the time of it actually being constructed. We need to change that in the future because it's just not something that, municipal levels of government have the cash to bear for every single project. But this is not the only project that is appreciated in cost. This is not the only project across the country where municipality had to absorb that increasing. And I think that this is something that is a good advocacy point for municipalities and is an advocacy point for municipalities at the tables I'm at in the future for future iterations of any infrastructure project that would occur in a city, whether it's transit related, wastewater related, or anything else. So appreciate the councilor's concerns about increasing costs. I think we're all very conscious of that, but there are reasons that this is still a good opportunity to take advantage of doing that underground water and wastewater work and getting the federal and provincial governments to pay for a good portion of it as well.
Thank you. Councillor Frank, before I go back to you, Councillor Purble did have his hand up for the first time, so I will go to Councillor Purble and then back to you.
Thank you, Chair, and through to the staff. And it's certainly based on the report and all the details. It certainly does make sense to me to get it done, absolutely. But I was actually, when I saw the amount for the engineering and this, it was quite high for me as well. I did hear the feedback from the staff. For example, it was comparison to the Chamber 13, what we've done. But still, this organization that we are giving it to, there was no, we went with them because they are familiar with it, they did this part, or was there an opportunity to go to other organizations and actually to see if there would be someone who would be coming up with a lower amount? Can you please kind of go into more detail of this process, how this came about with on the report?
Thank you. I'll go to Ms. Ramlou.
Thank you, through the chair. So this is a project or scope extension. So we already have the consultant on board doing the design work for the Wellington Gateway. So this becomes part of that scope rather than bringing in a second consultant who would be potentially doing rework. The high level of coordination would drive up costs, and et cetera. So it's best value to have the same consultant doing all the pieces.
Thank you for that, and I will have follow-up when certain projects like this happen and they realize, these organizations, they realize that it's the best to go with them as they're already familiar and they already have worked on this part of the project. Having said that, on the other hand, these companies, they realize it as well, and therefore they know that they will be the preferred ones that we will go to. Again, besides the Chamber 13, we really have comparisons that the quote that we receive from AECOM is competitive to potentially the other ones. So let's say if a taxpayer, or if I were to say, show me comparative of the work done here, done previously, it is 100% in line, and we are getting the best possible deal.
Ms. Ramley?
Thank you, through the chair. So yes, the original competition for this design work would have been a competitive process. So all those comparisons between, the rates and the scope of work and the amount of effort, that is all compared during that procurement process. So yes, I would be confident that they remain competitive. Again, we looked at, I believe it was actually a different company that did Chamber 13. So looking at that as a comparison does help us have a high degree of confidence that this is a reasonable amount of money for the considerable scope of work required for these chambers.
Counselor?
Thank you for the answers. No more questions.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to Counselor Frank.
Thank you, yes. And through you, I was hoping to ask staff, in their best estimates, what percentage of the BRT, the entire BRT project, both the South and the East Link, what percentage of the costs are related to below ground work like sewer and water mains versus above ground work like the paint and the lights?
Through the chair.
I'll go to Ms. Stan, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Through the chair, I don't have the exact information. I can provide that afterwards. What I can speak to is the fact that when we are doing this type of work, there are efficiencies, not just in the fact of avoiding having to go back in twice to the same area, but as the rapid transit project is going through, it's covering the restoration costs on the ground. If these underground infrastructure projects had advanced on their own, they would have had not just the cost of the underground infrastructure, but the restoration that costs as well. So we really are finding efficiencies in being able to maximize any infrastructure we can fix life cycle and for growth to support growth and intensification as we do these projects.
Counselor Frank?
Thank you. Yes, I'll be supporting this as throughout the entire project. Every time I see these reports, it seems to me personally, just based on reading these reports, even this one, for example, about 50% of the work seems to be below ground. And I think being able to leverage, as the mayor said, provincial and federal funding to do infrastructure work to allow for more homes to be built in the community, I think is really important. So again, I'll be supporting this, and I see it just as much of a rapid transit project as I do see it as sewer and stormwater projects.
Thank you. Counselor Hopkins, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank staff for finding these efficiencies. I'll be supporting the increases. I know we don't like to see increases come forward, but I do see that we need to find efficiencies. And again, like the mayor said, taking advantage of our grants is also important. Somehow I can't see us not doing this and continuing with the project and then coming back and having to do it again. Somehow I cannot see the construction on Wellington starting all over again. I think residents would not be too happy. So with that, I'll be supporting it.
Thank you. I have no further speakers at this time. I will look to open the vote.
Closing the vote, motion carries 5-1.
Thank you. That moves us on to item 2.2, the replacement of steam services at city facilities. I understand Deputy Mayor Lewis is online as well. I just wanted to let you know that if you're looking to speak, if you don't mind just turning on your camera. Perfect, thank you so much, and please let us know. So before we get this discussion started, I'm just looking for a mover and seconder before we begin our discussion. Councillor Pribble, Councillor Frank, and I'll look to those on committee for speakers. Mayor Morgan, go ahead.
Yeah, before I make comments on this, in order for us to have a full viewpoint from our staff, I'd like to make a motion to move into camera to receive legal advice from our solicitor on this matter.
Thank you. I'll look for a seconder. Councillor Hopkins. And we'll just wait for, oh, she's quick. She's got it all ready to go. We'll open that for a vote. Oh, any debate or question on going in camera? Okay, seeing none, we'll open that for a vote.
Closing the vote, motion carries 6-0. Just need a few minutes.
Thank you. We'll just take a few moments to get the room ready. Thank you. I will go to Councillor Frank to report out from in camera.
Thank you. I'd like to share that progress has been made for the item for which we went in camera for.
Thank you. We'll go back to our item. It's been moved and seconded. Looking for discussion on this item. That's 2.2, the placement of the STEAM services at city facilities. Mayor Morgan, go ahead.
Thank you, and thanks for indulging an opportunity to go in camera. So first on the report that our staff have crafted, I appreciate the report that you've given us. I think it's responsible for us to allocate a source of funding early on to address the issues of transition from the STEAM service that London District Energy and Enwave are discontinuing that impact both us and other civic buildings. I recognize there's also a number of private organizations that may be impacted, which I'm not aware of exactly who they are, but I am aware of the civic buildings, obviously. And I think, again, it's responsible for us to identify that we probably have some costs. It's early on. These are just envelopes. Obviously, as our staff work through any sort of design work, they'd be able to bring those down as well. There may be boards and commissions who have things like stabilization or reserve funds that could address unforeseen capital maintenance improvements that may be able to contribute to this as well. I anticipate all that work would be done by our staff, so I support the report. I want to just let colleagues know that I have spoken to representatives from Enwave about this in consultation with our staff. They did forward a letter which did not make it for the added agenda, but was circulated to members of the committee and council. There's a couple of lines in there that they added that I do want to read out. It says, we're investing in a smooth transition process for customers affected by the steam line decommissioning. Impacted customers, including the city, have access to dedicated community liaison and to project management supports to help ensure that the heating transition is clear, transparent, and responsive to customer needs. We understand the importance of ensuring that this transition is handled responsibly by the city for its stakeholders. LDE remains committed to working alongside the city to support a smooth, coordinated transition from the STEAM system. We look forward to maintaining our active partnership with the City of London team as this work progresses. So I'll give my opinion on this. And again, separate from the staff report, but related to the issue. I think that this is an organization that, if they want to have a good reputation in our community and want to continue to have a great partnership with the city, needs to do a little bit more than just a community liaison. I think that their timeframes are relatively short for a transition of this magnitude, and it would be ideal if they were going to expand and give us a little more time to work through the changes, especially given the design work that's necessary. It would be ideal to have more time and more flexibility there, and I believe that that's something that should be pursued. I would also say it's my personal belief that they should make a financial contribution to the city's situation. It's an organization that has provided a service for quite a number of years. They're not able to provide that service anymore. I recognize it's an unregulated section of the utility industry, and they may not necessarily have obligations to participate on that side of things, but I think it would be a good show of good faith and good community partnership to consider that. And I'll be fair, I suggested that to the Enwave executives and team as well. And I know that they'll engage with our staff on what matters look like moving into the future. But I will support the staff report again. This is just us identifying the envelope that we would work within so that we actually have that allocated, because irrespective of what contribution they may make or not, or the time frame they may give or not, it is clear that they are going to discontinue the service, and we need to move towards replacements, and this is a responsible identification of an envelope of funding to ensure that we're prepared to do that, whether we need to use the full envelope or not.
Thank you. I will look to members of committee before going to visiting councillors. I've got Councillor Pribble, then Councillor Hopkins, then Councillor Ferreira, then Councillor McAllister. Councillor Pribble, go ahead.
Thank you, and completely agree with the statement that was made by the mayor. In addition, I just want to ask, it says, of course, there's a challenging and complex project. And as we all know, actually, sometimes refurbishing and working with old is much more expensive and lengthy than actually building brand new. Based by I didn't see anywhere, yes, the funding, very important sources, etc. But do we know even if it's feasible that this is, because again, these units, these buildings, it's not just heat. Most of them, or maybe all of them, are on cooling system as well. Is this even feasible to do it by the time? Do we know that?
Thank you. I'll go to Ms. Stewart.
Thank you, Chair, through you. The early investigations that were undertaken would suggest that it is feasible to do it at each facility. The questions about the actual design, as we've mentioned, remain to be seen, but there are feasible options. The space that we have available could be a challenge, like to your point in terms of retrofitting an existing system versus building new, that kind of thing. So there are options, but the more detailed design will tell us specifically what those are.
Councillor Purple?
Thank you, and follow up. Retrofitting options are in place or possible. How about staffing-wise in these buildings? Any of these options, or sorry, all of these options, if you already know now, would allow the staff to stay in those buildings? Or would we have to move some of the staff, or we don't know that at this stage?
Ms. Stewart?
Through the chair, that's correct. We don't know at this stage. Our intention, though, if we couldn't maintain heat, would be to look at temporary boiler solutions as an interim step.
Councillor Purple?
Okay, thank you. No more questions right now.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Hopkins. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here, but just trying to understand when we're spending this amount of money, it's not in our budget. Obviously, we do have a source from the corporate contingency budget. But I guess my question maybe is any opportunities that we have available to address any kind of grants, are there any such grants out there that we as a nonprofit corporation can take advantage of? Is it something that there are opportunities, or is it something that we may have to just advocate a little bit more, turning over the stone as much as, you know, the stones along the way as we deal with upgrading our heating system? But wanting to know a little bit more about the funding opportunities and grants.
Thank you. I'll go to Ms. Barbone.
Thank you, through the chair. So right now, as we're undertaking a great deal of the work to try to get the design completed, that is urgency in terms of moving to the procurement stage so that we try to maximize every opportunity that we have to try to get the work complete. Concurrently, one of the things that we've also been doing is investigating other options. Certainly, we are trying to have discussions with Enwave to look at that opportunity, if there is any potential support from them, as well as any grant opportunities. So there are a number of things that we had looked at and have submitted applications for tentatively to look at some other opportunities. Some of them were actually perspective in nature in terms of things that we were trying to do, that now we may have to switch gears because obviously the priority is to maintain heat into the buildings as we get into the fall. So that work is going to continue, and we're going to continue to seek out opportunities at any levels. If there's federal, provincial funding, to seek out any opportunities that if there is anything that we're successful with, will then mitigate the amount of the cost in total for all of the municipalities, including the boards and commissions that are impacted.
Councillor Hopkins?
Yeah, thank you for that, and I'll continue to encourage you to seek those sources. Another question I had is around the disruption to the workplace. Is that something that we're going to sort of have to deal with as we go through the design or through the changes, or do we really know much about how the disruption of changing our heating is going to be in the building? And not only in our building, but the other buildings as well.
Ms. Stewart, go ahead.
Through the chair, it's really difficult to comment because each of these facilities operate very differently. I can say from our experience with the J. Allen Taylor building at 267 Dundas, we maintained operations throughout that project. However, I will put a proviso on that. It was during the summer months that we were doing the heating upgrade. But we were able to maintain all services there, and that would certainly be our intention.
Glad that you're aware of that, and thanks for the questions. I'll be supporting the recommendation.
Thank you. I have Councillor Ferreira next. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and for recognizing me as a visiting member. Some of the questions that I have, I guess, will be kind of tied off with some of the questions that I heard from Councillor Pribble on feasibility. And I do see that with this report, if we approve it, next steps would be to engage in consultants to start planning for the work and kind of moving ahead. So I guess my first question would be, with respect to that, do we have any consultants that we already know that we're going to be engaging, that we've already had contact with, especially considering we've kind of gone through this, the first round already?
Ms. Stewart?
Through the chair. So yes, we have engaged a couple of consulting firms, local consulting firms, to even do the investigation to get us to this point, both of which are firms that have worked in these facilities before. So we have the consulting firms on hand. What we could do is look towards like a design build solution where we may look for a package or a consortium that designer and a constructor can work together to move it forward. So that would be determined in the next steps through the procurement.
Councillor Ferreira?
Thank you for that, and I appreciate that answer. So for me, obviously, we have our 4 buildings here that are listed in this report that we need to address. Also, with being the council that holds downtown, I have several properties that have the same issues. Some of them are large residential complexes, and they're managing and trying to navigate their way through this as well. I am concerned with a potential competition with certain consultants, whereas if we have consultants that are able to help us and to do the work, we may leave no other organizations or businesses to do the work for other residential areas or condos that I see affected in my ward. So I do have that concern with that. And on top of that, I will say on the record, like I'm very unhappy with Enwave's decision to decommission, and I'm very unhappy with the time frame that we had. We had our first round on the low pressure line. They did the same thing, and we had to manage with that. We see it happening again. I do understand that we did get that letter for a smooth transition, but it is an accelerated transition. So it really kind of forces us to move as fast as we can, as well as other condo groups or other properties that are captured within the steam line to move fast as well, and it's putting a lot of pressure. It's putting a lot of pressure on certain properties around in the city. And when it comes to knowing that Enwave acquired London District Energy so many years, not too long ago, and assumed the service to provide the service, seeing that citations with issues with the infrastructure, and these are the reasons why we see this decommissioning. I would like to think that, you know, if a business came and bought up a service, they would continue that service. The impact that's happening, obviously, to us at City Hall is costly, above $8 million at the moment. That number could change, obviously, but then we have the same impact with other properties around the city as well. So I'm just really concerned that, you know, some properties, especially the residential ones, you know, may be stuck in a position where they may not have their heat, especially considering the whole environment that we're navigating through right now. So, like, those are my main concerns. I do see that there's other properties, there's other areas out there that are affected that are taking a different course of action than this report may be leading us to. I do see there are some comments at committee that there's a possibility for other courses of action. I myself struggle a lot to support this. Like, this is good work from staff, and this is exactly, you know, the path forward that will help us in the end. But at the same time, considering how we have received the information, how we received the information last minute, how this is the second round going through this again, I just wonder, is the high pressure line going to be next? Is there going to be further future issues that are happening with our underground network for steam heat? So I'm not going to ask that question because obviously that is a question that we can't really answer. And from our discussions with Enwave, it's been hard to get some of that information out. I do appreciate the assistance with that smooth transition, but ultimately, I think we should get financial compensation. I think we should be covered in full, and I think that all of the other properties in my ward that are affected should be covered in full as well, because this is turning out to be a big issue. We have, you know, downtown has its issues that we have to deal with, and this is just another one happening with, you know, a company that should be good partners with the city, good partners for our city, our partners that not only pursue, you know, don't, like for companies, they don't just pursue profits or shedding of any costs, but they also pursue the promotion of a better downtown and also pursue creating an environment that's livable. And in this situation, it's very direct, livable, no heat in the winter. That's not a good partner as far as I'm concerned. And I've been holding these comments back, trying to see if we can get some leeway, some forward movement. But
30 seconds.
It seems at this point, you know, we're left to have to do this. Obviously, we can't lose any of these buildings. We can't lose their heat, especially with Museum London. They have a lot of important artifacts and paintings there that need to be temperature controlled. But I fear for the large residential complexes. I fear for them being able or not able to raise the funds to do this, not being able to do it in the time that they have been provided, and with the competition of certain contractors that
Councillor.
we're looking for to do that work.
Thank you. I'll take that was comment for the most part. I'm not sure if staff have anything they want to say in response to any of those comments. I'll just check in. Ms. Barbone?
Thank you. And certainly from staff's perspective, our main objective is to ensure the continuity of heat. And these are public, very important buildings that we are working with the boards and commissions that are impacted to assist them and try to coordinate it across. Certainly, the next step will be our procurement strategy to go out to the market and look at how we can do that in an expedient way, but also in a realistic way to ensure that that can go forward. Certainly, through some of the mayor's discussions, I've also reached out to them to have a conversation and to continue to advocate for additional timing if that is a possibility to delay, and that will be a continued discussion as we move forward with the work to also try to work with them to see if there are other options that might be considered that would assist not only the city, but across the downtown as well.
Thank you. I had Councillor McAllister next.
Thank you, and through the chair, appreciate the opportunity to speak as a visiting councillor. I share a lot of the frustrations of my colleagues, and, you know, I've heard from other Londoners who are very upset about this as well. So, you know, I'll join them in blowing off some steam, pun intended. I think where I'm at with this is, I mean, it's just a reality. Unfortunately, they're going to do what they're going to do. It's unregulated, which has already been addressed. The mayor brought that up. So I guess my first question, I guess, on that is in terms of the regulatory side of things and understanding that this was a topic that was engaged with at AMO. Have we heard anything from the province in terms of any action they might take on this?
Thank you. I will go to Ms. Daters-Bear.
Thank you, through you, Chair. It is not my understanding that we've heard anything from the province, but certainly, as the mayor indicated, we have a letter from Enwave directly.
Okay.
Councillor McAllister?
Yep, sorry, and thank you, and through the chair. And I believe Ms. Barbone also just touched on this, but I am wondering, and we've been engaged at all in terms of doing a phased decommissioning as clients obviously work to get off of this, recognizing obviously that would reduce the load on, you know, their network. Have there been any discussions about doing this over maybe an extended period of time instead of the timeline that they've identified? Recognizing that they did say, you know, that there may be issues with it, but I would imagine as you take clients off of the system that it would reduce the load, and perhaps there's an opportunity to work with them on that timeline.
Ms. Barbone?
Thank you, through the chair. So it's a really good question and something that we did try to initiate having some conversations on. What I can tell you is the majority of the city buildings are at the very outermost end of those lines. So that was one of the questions originally, is it ends at the City Hall campus. So the further you get away from the central plant is where the greater amount of the risk lies. So the museum, the City Hall campus are at the outermost ends and would be one of the first buildings to be impacted, even if they were able to phase it in. So from that perspective, it certainly doesn't support the City of London in any way from having a phased-in process, but if there are any other ways that would extend the timing to at least get through the winter, that's going to be something that we will continue having discussions and trying to push. If there's any opportunities for that, would greatly assist us.
Councillor McAllister.
Thank you, and I appreciate that answer. That might be something helpful for Councillor Ferreira in terms of your engagement with your residents. There might be some opportunity there. I get my last question, and recognizing obviously this is an accelerated timeline, but is there any way that this work can be folded into the master accommodation plan, or is that kind of outside the scope of any work that would be done to our facilities?
Ms. Bourbon.
Thank you through the chair. So based on the timeline, this is done significantly before anything related to the master accommodation plan. So the earliest that any of those other things would happen are certainly well beyond the October timeframe. So obviously there's really not an ability to look at that in the short term. The primary objective is going to be to replace it with some form of system that will ensure the heat. And because of the short timeline, that coordination doesn't allow us that ability to look at another options that would give us some certainty, unless there was a temporary solution, in which case temporary solutions are probably going to be as likely, just as costly as doing a permanent solution in this case.
Councillor?
Thank you through the chair. And just to dovetail off of that, because I know we talked about this earlier in terms of finding those efficiencies, but recognizing it can't be part of MAP per se, but are there any other plans that we need to upgrade at the same time that we could, put the projects together instead of having to do it twice over?
Ms. Bourbon.
Thank you through the chair. Certainly that's something that we're looking at. We don't know of anything at this time that would be conducive to collaborating between the two projects, but certainly something that we'll keep our eyes open as we land on a final solution. Certainly the one that we do believe will give us a little bit of efficiency is to look at if there's solutions between Centennial Hall and the City of London or the actual City Hall building may allow us to have some opportunities and efficiencies there. But again, till the final designs are done, we don't know that for sure, but those are the kinds of things we will be looking for to try to create any efficiency between the projects as much as possible.
Councillor McAllister?
Thank you, and through you. And I think you identified, the reason why I was bringing that up is that I think my concern is in terms of anything we replace it with, I just want to be mindful that if the map or whatever we decide to do with that, obviously that project is farther, it's down the line, but I just don't want to install something and then recognize later on that it's insufficient for what we need to redevelop the campus. So just keeping those two things in mind. I know we have to do one before the other, but just again being mindful of not trying to do things twice over. And thank you for all the answers, and I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Looking for any further speakers on this item? Mayor Morgan.
I just want to ask staff any general updates that they've had from, I don't know if there's been, I know I've engaged with Enwave, but no staff have. Is there anything that you might have that's any new information since the time of the writing of the report that would be relevant? Recognizing this report is really just the identification of the funding envelope.
Ms. Bourbon.
Thank you through the chair. I did follow up further to your discussion, and I have not received any information back. So unfortunately, I don't have any new information, but we will continue to follow up, and hopefully before council, we may hear something further.
Okay. Seeing no further speakers on this item, we'll look to open the vote.
Closing the vote, motion carries 6-0.
Okay, that brings us to item 2.3, which is the Affordable Rental Housing Subclass Report. I will go to Ms. Bourbon first, just to give us a little bit of a preamble to this one. Thank you. Ms. Barbone, go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. So just to provide a bit of an overview, so this is something that was introduced through the most recent provincial budget, and the regulations have been passed to allow the City of London to consider whether they wish to add a subclass for the affordable rental housing. This is an optional subclass, so this is not something that the city is obligated to do. However, what I would point out is that in order to receive the information as part of the tax roll, the province, we need to request the inclusion of a subclass before September 30th of each year. So if the city were to support moving forward, we would provide that information to the province, and then MPAC would include and work towards inclusion of that subclass and the associated properties as part of that prior to the return of the roll for this year. That would then allow the following year the council to consider whether they wish to include a discount, which can range in the form of 0 all the way up to 35%. So there are a couple of different, so one is if you establish a subclass, you'll receive the roll in time to be able to consider it next year, the following year. So each and every year, the city has that opportunity. Once a subclass has been established, if the municipality wishes to do so, then the following year, through the tax policy, that is when the council could consider. So if you don't decide to include the subclass, then those properties will not be there. But if you wish to do so in the future, then as long as you pass a bylaw to do so before September, then MPAC would be able to include it for inclusion and discussion of a potential discount the following year. So there's a couple of different stopgaps in the different decision points for the council to take, but certainly I think the most important part is that if you do introduce a subclass and council does wish to put in a discount, that discount then is borne by all the other classes. So where you have a discount, that has to go up elsewhere and is proportionately across the other classes would bear that discount. So certainly up to the council. So we wanted to bring this forward and have everything ready to go should the council wish to proceed. If you don't wish to proceed, you can certainly entertain this in future years to have the subclass included for a potential discount in future years.
Thank you, and we appreciate that input. So to begin our discussion, I'll go to Mayor Morgan to look to move a motion.
Yeah, so I want to put just A on the floor, which includes receiving the report but not creating the subclass for this year. And then I'm happy to, if there's a seconder for that, I can explain my rationale.
Thank you. I'll look for a seconder. I'm happy to second it. With that item on the floor, I will look for discussion on this item, and I'll start with Mayor Morgan.
Okay, so it's not that I have any, I'm not permanently opposed to creating a subclass and then investigating, applying a discount to it. But there's a couple of considerations that I think council should, and committee should be aware of, should we go that route and when we go that route. Because again, we're not precluded from doing this. We just have to do it by a certain date each and every year to get the roll from MPAC. But there's a couple of things to be aware of. One is, I still think there's some advocacy work to do with the province on the regulations. The regulations are relatively broad in how they define the affordable subclass. And I think that, we don't have the option at this time to say, hey, we want to provide a tax break for RGI housing, but not, 90% of market-based rents. It's a specific definition in the regulations that refer to the Development Charges Act, I believe. I can't remember exactly where, but our staff can say that is relatively broad at this time. And I think it would be nice to have more flexibility there on behalf of municipalities to decide, where and how wide do we want to supply any sort of discount. The second is, if we supply a fairly wide discount, it's not like we're just giving money away. Every other tax class in the city, including the residential tax class, the industrial tax class, the commercial tax class, will all absorb the cost of that reduction. Like they'll pay for that reduction. And at this time, we don't know the extent of how big that group would be. We also don't know whether we want to make it that big. And we don't want to necessarily add that burden to the other classes, especially at a time where we know that the classes have been frozen since 2016. So there will be a point at which the province comes up with a plan on how they're going to unfreeze the classes. And we may see wide swings in who across the city actually pays for the municipal budget because there are different ways that the different tax classes have appreciated over the last decade or so. So I just think at this time, layering something else on top of all that, at a time when there's a lot of unknowns and at a time where I think there's still some advocacy work to do with the province about giving municipalities a little more flexibility on how broad they want to make that class, doesn't stop us from doing it in the future. But if we're going to try to answer all those questions over the next little while and we're not going to provide a discount in 2026, which I don't think we would because we wouldn't have all those questions answered, then we can entertain this in the future. The only decision point we're making today is, do we want to establish a subclass this year to give us the option for 2026? And I just don't see us pursuing a discount in 2026, given how many things we need to engage with the province on, how many questions there are, and the fact that we still don't know where the province is headed on the unfreezing of the MPAC assessments. So for me, there's just way too many unknowns with proceeding at this time. Doesn't mean I'm against it in the future, but I'd rather get a number of these questions answered before I proceed with having our staff do all of the work of creating the subclass, having MPAC do all the work of populating out, and then we may be dissatisfied with that grouping of properties because we want it to be a little bit more narrow, which we would have to go through asking the province for support to adjust the legislation anyways. We'd have to go through the whole process again after that point. So I'd rather get this right in the steps in the order that council would want to. And I think there's some advocacy steps before we take the province up on this new option of even creating this class, which again, we have the ability to do at any point in the future. It need not be the very first year that it's available before us.
Thank you. Okay, looking for other speakers on the report. And I'll go to Councillor Purple.
Thank you, through the chair to the staff. If we were to implement this subclass, and as it states in your report, it's based on unit by unit basis, so it doesn't have to be 100% of the building, 100% of the units. I have a couple of questions. How would this be actually tracked? How will this be kind of potentially enforced? How will this be that if the owner decides throughout the year to change the classification as potentially changing their mind, going from the affordable to the market rent, how would this actually work in the kind of the everyday real life if we were to implement this?
Through the chair, the assessment value and the classification are all determined by MPAC, so we would receive that information from them. If there was a change in year, just as there are in some cases with other classes, then we would receive an adjusted assessment from MPAC, right? So if they no longer qualify for that class, then they would revert to whatever class MPAC determines, most likely a new multi-res or multi-res.
Councillor Purple?
Okay, I do have a follow-up. So yes, that would be all by MPAC. Do we know how MPAC deals with this? How, if I were to ask MPAC these questions in a municipality where this potential is in place, how is this answered? I'm just curious in terms of the tracking, in terms of the owners changing throughout the year, their mind, their policy changing from market to an affordable, etc. So I understand that it's all, we are putting it all onto the MPAC's side and we are just taking their information. I'm just as this would influence, as we heard from the mayor, other classes, other classifications, how could we defend it if the resident were to ask us, how do we know it's appropriately done in terms of fairness of these building owners who would be applying for such classification?
Mr. McMillan?
I'm going to start because it's a very general.
Go ahead.
So the councillor raises a good question, and I think the answer to that is we don't know. This is work that MPAC, so note this is brand new. MPAC has to determine how to identify what properties need to get added to the tax roll. We do not know what that process is yet, and certainly that is part of the challenge of being immediately implementing it, is we do not know what that process is yet. That is something that MPAC still has yet to determine. What we do know is that it requires an agreement in place, so the agreement would ultimately govern it, but how the logistics are going to work and where that work falls, there will be some work we expect also on the municipality to help them determine what that is, subject to the agreements in place. But the exact logistics, we do not know, and we do not believe MPAC knows at this point in time what that process is going to be.
Councillor Purple.
Thank you very much for your answers, and that helped me to determine how am I gonna vote and to be not supporting it, because at this time, I cannot justify the fairness towards the all taxpayers within City of London. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to clarify, the motion that's on the table right now is to receive, just the report. Okay, I will look to other speakers. I have Councillor Hopkins. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. When I first read this report, I was pretty excited about it, having another class structure, supporting true affordable housing, having that ability there. I think we do need something like that, but I do appreciate the mayor's comments when it comes to the impact assessments that have not been done since 2016. I know at AMO, we have been pushing the provincial government to get us as municipalities an understanding. We need to know where we are, what we have, and where we can go, and we're still not there. So it really just boils down to we do not know, and that causes me to be a bit concerned as we try to institute a new subclass, but we have to have that information. I wonder, a question through you, Madam Chair, to staff, is there an opportunity, I know MPAC is given the task of finding these properties and figuring that out, but is there any way we can have that kind of information ourselves when we look at this next year? Or do we have to wait and see? I'm just trying to be a little bit more, have more information, more data as a city when we revisit this or not. On a yearly basis. It's really unsettling to have to make decisions when we really don't know anything. I wonder, are there opportunities to get information and understand about these properties a little bit more as we prepare for another conversation when this comes back to us?
I'll go to
Thank you, through the chair. I've had some discussions with our liaison at MPAC, and really they don't have a framework yet as to even how they're going to determine or evaluate the legislation and what their tasks are for identifying which properties will qualify for the new real tax qualifier. So really, the timing of this report is such that if the city chose to implement it in 2026, we would need to do it by the end of this month. It's no way saying that that's the best option. It was just making sure that council is aware of the opportunity. I was at OMTRA last week, and the general consensus there was also that there's not enough information, and that people are waiting to see how it's going to be identified, or how properties will be able to be identified as qualifying for this subclass.
Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, I appreciate this feedback. So we're definitely not there. So again, I want to thank the mayor for bringing this to our attention, and I will be supporting A and seeing what comes back to us next year. Who knows? Thank you.
Thank you. Looking for other speakers. Okay, seeing none, this is moved and seconded to receive. We'll open the vote.
Closing the vote, motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. That takes us to our confidential items. We have 2 items to deal with in closed session. 6.1, land acquisition, and the reasons are in the agenda. We have 6.2, labor relations, as well cited in our agenda. I'll look for a mover and a seconder of Councillor Hopkins, seconded by Councillor Van Meerbergen, and we'll look to open the vote.
Councillor Van Meerbergen? Closing the vote, motion carries 6-0.
Recording in progress.
Thank you. I'll ask Counselor Frank to report out from in camera, please.
Thank you, and I'm pleased to share that progress has been made for the items for which we went in camera for.
Thank you. And with that, item 7, adjournment. I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Counselor Van Meerberg, Counselor Hopkins, all in favor by hand.
Motion carries.
Thanks, everyone.